Hello everyone, now if you are watching this video, I assume that you already know about this graphic card and you are here to see how it runs some games in 2024. Now for those who don't know, it's a GTX 1070 released by Nvidia in June 2016. Yes, it's 8 years old in a few days and can nowadays be found on the used market for around 100 US dollars. Now I'm not going to bore you with the technical specs, but here are some main things to consider. It has 8 gigs of GDDR5 memory, no DLSS support and requires 150 watts of power. I've tested a total of 20 games from the past several years while pairing it with a Core i5-12400F with 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. Before moving on, a like and subscribe will motivate me to make more videos. Starting with the oldest game on the list, we have GTA 5. Now I've tested all the games today at 1080p, so keep that in mind. Now the game defaulted to very high settings and this card has no problem playing it. The FPS always stayed above 100 and during my entire benchmark there were no stutters as indicated by the percentile loss. Rainbow Six Siege with high settings and 100% render scale performed really well. With an average over 150 FPS, it makes a superb high refresh rate experience. Also please note that the numbers that you're seeing on the screen is an average of 3 online matches. Fortnite at low settings with textures and view distance set to high ran with over 150 FPS average. Now the 1% loss were decent enough, but the 0.1% loss were in the 20. This number is from the 3 online matches that I played, which indicates micro stutter, but honestly, I never felt it during my gameplay. So this can be blamed on the game's engine and its optimization. The latest entry in the Tomb Raider series, Shadow of the Tomb Raider at ultra settings had no issues with the 1070. This 2018 game still looks amazing to this day and the FPS number proves that you don't need a beefy GPU to play this classic.
Plane. Jonah, are you there?
Battlefield 5 due to anti-cheat didn't work with MSI Afterburner, so I had to use a different monitoring software. Regardless of that, at high settings, the game ran well with an average over 100 FPS and the 1% loss were in the 60s. Even during intense battles, I rarely saw the FPS dropping below 80, which is great. Red Dead Redemption 2, with a little help of FSR, didn't quite perform as I hope it would perform. But don't get it wrong, with high settings and ultra textures, the game averaged over 50 FPS, which is not bad at all, just not the 60 I was expecting. The card was not powerful enough for these settings, even though it has 8GB of VRAM. However, turning down the few settings to medium can assure a solid 60 FPS. Ubisoft's Ghost Recon Breakpoint had a rough start when it was released back in 2019, but after few updates, I'd say this game is in a better place. Using the ultimate preset, the average FPS was just shy of 60 with decent percentile loss. Now depending on where you are on the map and what you're doing, the game fluctuates between 50 and 70 FPS, which is not bad. Assassin's Creed Valhalla with very high preset ran impressively with 60 FPS average and percentile loss in the 30s. Just like Breakpoint, the FPS fluctuates between 50 and 70 depending on where you are and what you're doing. However, reducing the settings will assure you a solid 60 plus experience. Cyberpunk 2077. We all could say it was kind of a disaster back when it was released in 2020, but right now it's a completely different game. With the medium preset, high textures and FSR set to quality, the 1070 handles this game like a dream. With 60 FPS average and very decent percentile loss, it was a great experience overall. Moving to 2021, we have Ubisoft's Far Cry 6 with ultra settings and no upscaling. The game averaged around 58 FPS with 1% loss in the 40s. I don't know if this is a Ubisoft thing or the game engine. The game would sometimes drop to mid 40s but mostly stay at about 50, which is good. Days Gone is the type of game we gamers want. Using the very high preset, the game ran a solid 60 FPS average. No frame drops, no stutters and a whole lot of zombies makes this a great experience. Like Cyberpunk, Battlefield 2042 also had a rough start in 2021 with performance issues and glitches, but after several updates, it looks like the game is fixed. Again, MSI Afterburners wouldn't work with it, but apart from that, the game performed well with average at 90s. There were no frame drops or stutters, which was great for an FPS game like this. Released in 2022, Spider-Man Remastered with high preset ran over 60 FPS average. The percentile loss shows that the gameplay was smooth, and even in the GPU intensive areas such as the Central Park, the game rarely dropped from the high 50s, which is great. Now The Witcher 3 was released back in 2015, but the next gen update with graphic improvements was released in 2022, so I had to include the game in the list here. With high settings and FSR set to quality, the game averaged 72 FPS and stayed mostly above 60 even during battles. Now I would not turn down any settings further and use FSR, as the game looked much better at high than at medium. Dying Light 2 with high settings, shadows set to medium and quality FSR ran without a hitch. With average over 60 FPS and percentile loss above 50 indicates that the game was optimized great. Even with FSR at 1080p, the game still looked sharp and I haven't noticed any graphical glitches during my gameplay. Moving on to 2023, The Last of Us Part 1 with high preset and frame generation turned on performed well over 60 FPS average, with 1% loss close to 60. Now there is a tiny bit of input lag when using frame generation, however it was not that noticeable and you will get used to it, especially if you are playing with a controller.
Another abandoned quarantine zone.
Counter-Strike 2 had no issues on this card. With low settings and FSR turned off, the game averaged over 200 FPS. All the 3 casual matches I played gave a similar result and the FPS didn't drop much even with smokes and molotovs on the screen. This card is all you need if you just want to play Counter-Strike 2. One of the poorly optimized games of 2023 is City Skylines 2. Low settings in this game looks like trash, so I went with the medium preset and the game kinda ran okay for its state. Now it's not a fast paced game by any means and you could get used to it if you really wanna play this game. The Finals is a free to play game released in 2023 with some great visuals and some of the best physics I saw in a video game. With lowest settings and FSR set to quality, I'm surprised to see that the game ran with over 100 FPS average. I'd stick to these settings if I own a 1070, which to be honest doesn't look bad either. The last and most recent game on the list, The Ghost of Tsushima, is a very gorgeous and well optimized game in my opinion. With the help of FSR at high settings and textures set to very high, the game averaged over 50 FPS with no major frame drops during my 30 minutes of benchmark run. This game looked absolutely gorgeous at these settings and you don't need to reduce anything to play this comfortably. With all the games tested, what do you guys think? Is this card worth it in 2024? My answer would be yes. Now, as long as you're not overpaying for it and have reasonable expectations out of it, it is a very good card. Now, if you are really limited on your budget and just wanted to play some games, this is a very capable card in 2024. I might be wrong, but let me know what you guys think of it in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.